welcome to Inside Iraq. I'm Jassim Azzawi. In 2003, the world was assured by President Bush that toppling Saddam's regime will usher in a new era of human rights in Iraq. We were told Iraq will become a beacon of democracy and tolerance. Today, UN agencies brand Iraq's human rights record as one of the worst. Execution in the last 2 years has risen to an alarming level. Women have been systematically raped in Iraqi prisons, both in Kurdistan as well as in the rest of the country. Minority rights are trampled upon, and the number of murdered Iraqi journalists has reached a horrific height. Yet, al-Maliki's government claims it's making progress. In fact, it has gone on the offensive. The Ministry of Human Rights claims US forces are responsible for killing more than 100 Iraqi prisoners. Today, 7 years after toppling Saddam, a big question looms over Iraq, a question that has given writers and political observers an ample space to ponder. How do we compare current human rights conditions in Iraq with that of the toppled dictator? To discuss Iraq's current human rights record, I am joined from Washington by Joe Stork, Deputy Director of Middle East and North Africa Division of Human Rights Watch, and from Baghdad by Shadha al-Obosi, an Iraqi Member of Parliament and Deputy Chairperson of the Human Rights Committee in Iraq's Parliament, and from London by al-Mukhtar, President of Arab Lawyers Association in Britain. Welcome to Inside Iraq. Shadha al-Obosi, originally when we planned this show, we were supposed to have the Iraqi Human Rights Minister, Wajdan Mikhail, but unfortunately, at the last moment, we had to replace her with you. I'm delighted to have you. Let me ask you a very simple question. Not only you are an Iraqi that witnessed a human rights record in Iraq, but also you are the deputy chairperson. How do you assess a human rights record in Iraq?
The situation of human rights in Iraq is still worrying because with the huge number of detainees, with the minorities' rights, with the women's rights, with the killing peoples, the human rights belong to the security situation. We have very bad situation after 2003, after the occupation. The American arrested people and killed people without any judge about them because they didn't belong for the Iraqi law. After that, in the 2005 and 2006, the very bad situation of the security make a huge number of detainees in the prisons, and there's no trial for them. They are asking for fair trial. If they are innocent, to release them, or they are guilty, to put them in the prisons. That's what they need. We have very bad situation in the prisons, with the crowding, with the bad food, with the bad health care. So we look after their cases to find,
yes,
to end this file. And we have another challenges about the minorities.
We will come to the other challenges and human rights for women as well as the minorities, Shadha. We'll come back to it, but the bleak picture as portrayed, Joe Stork, by Shadha al-Obosi, it is not alien to you. You must have run across this many times. Your organization elevates a report to the world community as well as to the UN.
Right.
Did she present an accurate picture, or is it worse than that or less than that?
Well, I think almost all of the things she mentioned are things we are aware of, and I would subscribe to her, list of the many problems that Iraq faces. I think we should distinguish between those problems that the government has a direct ability to affect, in the near term, in the short term, and those things like very important issues like protection of the population, which is obviously there are human rights aspects to it, but there are other aspects as well. And obviously there's a capacity issue in terms of the government's ability here. So let me talk just for a second about what I think the government can do and should do in the near term. First, we have the escalation, as you noted, Jassim, the escalation in executions. Executions resumed in May of 2008. There are scores of people, if not hundreds of people, with death sentences now. There have been mass executions, that is to say, dozens of people executed in on a single morning. There's no transparency about this, and there's two points to make. One, I mean, we're opposed to the death penalty under any circumstances, but we're especially worried in a situation where you have people who have been convicted after patently unfair trials. They have not had access to lawyers.
I can predict, Joe, that list is going to be extremely long. Keep some of the ideas that you would like to list later on, but let me engage Sabah al-Mukhtar, who is just fresh right now from that Geneva conference held under the auspices of the United Nations. Give us a brief summary of what has been said vis-a-vis Iraq's human rights record and what Wujdan Mikhail, the Iraqi Minister of Human Rights, said.
Well, the minister presented a document a report to the UN General Council. The report said nothing about the accusations which have been levied against Iraq by the UN organizations. It didn't address absolutely any of the obligations, any of the accusations. It was just talking general conversation about how things should be, what the law says, what the international obligations are. So the report contained absolutely nothing. The minister brought with her a team. One of her team went on for a quarter of an hour, boring the council, talking about the previous regime rather than talking about the human rights situation. The countries have all commented negatively on the report, including the United States of America, which said to the Iraqi minister that their election should be one that allows people to stand for election rather than excluding people. Everybody condemned the situation of executions and hanging. Everybody talked about the academics, killing of 500 academics, 200 journalists, 24 judges, 150 lawyers in the country, the torture, the prison situations, all the countries that spoke there.
So in a nutshell, they have blasted Iraq's claim that is making progress out of the water. I noticed, Shada al-Obosi, in your response to me, you also harped on the Americans. I am the first to recognize, and many people, including Joe, will recognize that the chaos and the pain and the killing that followed 2003 in one way or another is because of the American invasion. But that is in the past, and I'm sure as the Americans withdraw their forces, their contribution to the violations of human rights will be diminished. But talk to me about the current level of human rights abuse in Iraq. The government is responsible for that. No matter how you cut it, al-Maliki and his government are responsible for that.
They have the Human Rights Ministry, as our guys say. So the problem with the Ministry of Human Rights, so they must don't announce anything against the human rights, because the torture happened by the government in the prisons, who can torture the people there. She cannot say this clearly in the media or in front of the international associations. So this is the problem. For this reason, we established the Human Rights Commission, and we want this commission to start before we leave this period for the parliament. But the government didn't allow us to do that, because any thing happen against the human rights, it will be announced for the national or UN or for any international association. This is the problem. They can do a lot to protect people. The first right of the Iraqi citizen, the right of living in his house.
Indeed, that is an inalienable right. It should be guaranteed by all constitution and by all governments. Joe Stork,
but I want to mention about the execution. We want to delay the execution orders after the elections, because I receive many claims from people that they take their speech and they sign them under the torture. So many of them are innocent. We are afraid if there's a few number of them are innocent, so we must protect all of them and make another investigation with them to guarantee if they are innocent or not.
If that is the case, Shada al-Obosi, let me ask a question. Let me ask a question, and I'll take two quick responses, one from Sabah and one from Stork. The reason for this extrajudicial killings that is being carried out by militias infiltrated into the Iraqi security forces. You know very well, Sabah, that after 2004, 2005, hundreds and thousands of former militia people, thugs and killers, they were introduced as part of a sectarian bargain into the Iraqi government. And currently, right now, some of them, they run these prisons. Sabah, go first.
In the first instance, to have a national police or a national army, you must have a unit that believes in the nation. At the present moment, you have a mishmash of militias who have all been put together, but their allegiance is not for the country, but either for the sect or the political party or an ethnicity or another. That's number one. Number two, I think at the present moment, this is a unique situation where the vice president of the state calls in the Minister of Human Rights, and he hands her a list of the so-called secret prisons instead of taking some action, because in theory he's the vice president. And the Minister of Human Rights takes the list and does nothing about it and talks nothing about it. This is a very incredible situation that exists in Iraq at the end of the day, that people are paying the price for the lack of government, because this is what has been, this is a city-state, and it is not a state. It's been reduced to literally groups of people, each one running his own ministry, each one running his own prison, each one is running his own militia. And that is what the Iraqi people are suffering now under the present government regime.
Yeah, let me break in here. I think you know, it's fine to have a ministry for human rights and a minister for human rights, but after all, that person, whoever he or she is working for the government. You know, the law calls for an independent higher commission for human rights, which has been established by law. The statute is passed, but there's no funding for it. This is something that the government of Maliki could have done at any point and should do immediately. There's absolutely no reason that this is not set. An independent commission has still, to this day, not been established. I think that's point number one. Point number two, you're right. The Ministry of Interior, in particular, has been suffused with politics. Its membership, the security forces, are made up of people with allegiances that are to particular factions, political factions, sectarian factions, and so forth. This has to be addressed. And while the situation may not be quite as bad today
well, you
as
say
it was
that
2 or
has
3
to be
years
addressed.
ago,
Let me address it to Shad al-Obosi, and let me give you an example, so we're not talking in generalities. You remember very well, Shad al-Obosi, a couple of years back, when members of the Ministry of Interior, they jumped over to the Ministry of Higher Education, and they grabbed ordinary people, people who were there in order just to try to get a visa or try to get their papers to go and travel abroad to study. They grabbed 148 people. They hauled them all the way to the cellar of the Ministry of Interior, and they were tortured simply because there was a rivalry between two ministers. When that was broken by the Americans, whom you blasted at the beginning of your speech, when they revealed that this is the torture is going on in this cellar, the minister at the time, the Interior Minister, Bayan Salah Jabr, who is now, lo and behold, is the Minister of Finance, he said, no, absolutely not. We did not torture 148. We tortured something like 27. He was quibbling about the numbers. I'm asking you as a co-chairperson of the Human Rights Committee, do you have the courage, do you have the power, do you have the will to challenge the political elite?
Yeah, in the beginning, the all parliament cannot ask or ask any minister, because it's all politically. The Maliki didn't allow us to ask any minister. After, in the last year, we asked some of the ministers, but even with this situation, we go for any prison that we hear there's torture there, and we write our report to and send it for the government. We change something, not anything, but something for the best.
So you are in the business of just writing reports, that's it?
Yeah, right, and no, we follow up if there's any torture or not. And
Joe is shaking his head, you know that.
Anything. Yeah, very bad. And you speak about the higher education, you know, the people who arrested, until now they are missing persons. My cousin, one of them, till now we didn't find him.
like in so many other cases, horrible cases like this, there's been no serious investigation. There's rank impunity. I mean, nobody is being held to account. Mr. Jabber now has another post. Perhaps it's even a more powerful post. Who's going to answer for those?
I cannot help but ask you an unfair question, Joe. Since you are with the human rights, it's an American organization. You are an American. You are talking to Afro-Americans. Anybody listening to this show is going to say, well, you brought it on.
Look, yes, the political chaos that resulted from the American invasion is an American political responsibility, for sure. But look who let's not shift responsibility here. Certain people carried out abductions, carried out torture in the basement of the Ministry of Interior. They were not Americans. So let's put the blame where it belongs, on the people who committed the crimes. Those are the people that have to be investigated. There are plenty of Americans. No, just a minute. There are plenty of Americans that also need to be investigated, as our organization has called for, including people like Mr. Rumsfeld, Mr. Cheney, Mr. Tenet from the CIA, and so forth. No question about it. But not for the torture. Sorry, not for the torture of these individuals from the Ministry of Higher Education in the basement of the Ministry of Interior. That's not an American responsibility. That's an Iraqi responsibility.
Go ahead, Sabah.
But Joe, can I suggest to you that under the Geneva Convention, the USA, as an occupying force, has a duty in international law to protect the civilian population of the occupied territories, and that continues to be today. Although the U.S. government talks about a sovereign. Sorry, let me just finish.
Wait a minute.
Can I just finish? Sorry, can I just finish this? The U.S. is talking about a sovereign government when we have 150,000 American soldiers, 150,000 mercenaries in Iraq. This is an occupied territory, but if not legal, which it is a de facto occupation by the U.S., which has
give the man a chance to answer, Sabah.
Look, there's no question the multinationals as a whole were definitely derelict in their responsibility to, as you say, under the Geneva Conventions, as occupying powers, to protect the civilian population. They failed in so many respects. We don't have to go into that right now. We're talking about a particular incident that you raised, and now to try and put the blame for that on the Americans, sorry, that just doesn't go.
Shad al-Obosi, we mentioned in our intro that rape has become systematic in Iraqi prisons, not only in Baghdad, not only in Basra, but all the way in Suleimaniya and Erbil. This is, when it comes to raping women, is not only a human rights violation, but when it comes in a very conservative Muslim country like Iraq, it's even doubly worse.
I want to add something before I mention about Iraqi prisons. Who learn Iraqi's torture? You remember, and all the world remember the torture in Abu Ghraib prison. It was the sample for
that is not fair, Shad al-Obosi. That is not fair. Torture was carried out during Saddam's. Some of the people who tortured now in Iraqi prisons, they are working for the new government. I understand Abu Ghraib. I understand Abu Ghraib. But don't say the Americans came to the U.S. and they taught us how to torture. That is simply not true and not fair.
Yeah, but the situation in all prisons still worrying, as I mentioned in the beginning. But we follow up in each governorate and each prison in Iraq. When we hear any torture there, so we go.
Talk to me about rape.
We write the
Talk to me about
reports.
Rape. As a woman, you relate to that. Talk to me about rape that is being carried out on a daily basis in Iraqi prisons. Make it quick.
The problems with the crowding, with the very bad food, and the bad health care, not just not enough, but very bad health care. So the huge number, and with the old prisons, we have about 18,000 detainees, and about 12,000 prisoners in Iraqi prisons, and about 5,800 detainees in American side. All of them, they need to follow up by judges. So the higher judiciary council say that we didn't have enough judges.
I have only 2 minutes left to me. Sabah, explain to me, what is the fascination with Iraqi officials and human rights? They always keep talking about the protection of gay rights in Iraq, or when that subject is brought by other community and by other countries, they actually love it to talk about gay rights, which is a very small, minor issue.
Well, in fact, this is during the Council, most of the European countries, and indeed the US as well, raised the issue of the homosexuals as if it is the human right abuse in Iraq. The killing of tens of thousands of people, disappearances, torture, and all these things seem to be put in the same level as the lack of freedom of practicing homosexuality. This is the normal process.
That's not the issue. The issue is the persecution, the abduction.
Well, this is exactly how we are diverting attention from the real issue.
Simply because they may be gay.
Diverting the attention
This is
from
about
the real
killing.
issue.
This is about torture. This is not about protecting gay rights. This is about protecting people from being killed and tortured.
Sorry, Joe, I was sitting there in the Council, and I could send you the list of the countries that have talked about the most important
I don't care
element
about
to them
the Council.
is that the homosexuals are not given the rights there.
I don't care about Geneva.
And so do I.
I care about what's going on in Iraq. And what's going on in Iraq is people being picked up and killed and tortured in the most horrible ways simply because they may be gay.
You are trying to sell me your own organization. That was the forum that was addressing the issues of abuses of human rights, and most of the European countries concentrated their answers on this issue, diverting attention from the main cause that there is a government which is not a government, which is abusing the rights there.
Let me ask Joe, perhaps the last question. Joe, when you elevate these reports and you send a copy to the State Department as well as to the White House, you are one of the leading human rights organizations in the world, in addition to Amnesty International. Do you get any response? Does the Obama administration care about what is going on in Iraq?
Oh, I think they care very much, not the least of all because there are so many American troops there that they would like to remove. So they care very much about what's going on in Iraq. Do they have the same priorities we do? No, of course not.
Do they lean on al-Maliki's government?
Organization. I think they do. I think they do. But do they lean hard enough on these issues? No, I don't think so. There's plenty of problems with the American relationship here. Now, look, there's an issue that Sabah raised earlier, the exclusion of people for so-called Ba'athi connections. This is something the Americans have weighed in on, too. It's something we've opposed, this non-transparent, completely unfair blacklisting of people.
Shada, in less than 30 seconds, will this new election on March 7th is going to change the status of human rights in Iraq? Make it very quick.
For me, I'm very optimistic for new elections, especially with open list, and we educate people to select the right person for the right position and to protect the human rights and to finish the file of detainees and torture in Iraq.
Sabah, in less than 30 seconds, will we be talking about a human rights abuse 15 years from now, as if it is the same level as in 2006?
15 years, I don't know, but 10 years, yes, we will still be doing that because there is no state in Iraq.
Sabah al-Mukhtar, Shada al-Obosi, Joe Stork, thank you for being guests on Inside Iraq.
Glad to be with you.
Thank you.
To watch the show online, please visit our website, aljazeera.net/English. We have reached the end of this show. Join me next week when we take another look inside Iraq. Until then, this is Jassim Azzawi wishing you a great week.